Many thanks for staying with us and welcome back. You're watching Business Week here on Arise News. Now, Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has announced an emergency 6-month economic stabilization plan that will cost an estimated 2 trillion naira with a focus on food and energy security. According to Finance Minister Wale Edun, the package under this plan will include 350 billion naira for health and social welfare, 500 billion naira for agriculture and food security, 500 billion naira for the energy and power sector, and 650 billion naira for general business support, in addition to a range of fiscal measures, as well as measures to ease the cost of doing business. How effective will these measures be? Well, the Nigeria Economic Summit Group has since inception advocated for a number of critical policies for successive governments in Nigeria. Dr. Osasuyi Dirisu is the Executive Director of the Policy Innovation Center, the first national institutionalized behavioral initiative in Africa, supporting government and stakeholders to make informed decisions and generate evidence for impact-driven interventions in the critical economic sector. The NESG's Policy Innovation Center is also focused on how diverse voices can contribute to economic policy making. Its Purple Book, which advocates a gender-based approach, is one of the tools it's using to drive interventions for economic growth and attracting investment. Dr. Osasuyi has spearheaded a number of projects at the NESG, including the first ever national-level Gender and Inclusion Summit to explore transformative ways to achieve gender equality, gender-responsive governance, and accelerate the actualization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Good morning to you, Dr. Osasuyi. Thank you for joining us in Business Week today.
Good morning, Rolake. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Very well. You must welcome. It's Abby you're speaking to here. Very great to have you on the show. Now, let's begin. Let's get right into the conversation. President Tinubu this week announced a 2 trillion naira economic stabilization plan with a focus on food and energy security. Now, what impact do you believe this initiative will have on the economy?
Thank you. So, in the past year, we have watched a number of reforms unfold, but we have also watched issues relating to increased cost of living crisis, food insecurity, rising inflation. And so this is welcome news. Although it's still, the details, are still unclear, I think one of the things that we're happy to see, first of all, is critical sectors are being targeted. So health and social welfare, agriculture and food security, energy, and then also the private sector, productivity is also on the table, being able to boost productivity. So while the details are still unclear, I think it's a signal in the right direction as we watch for how this unfolds in the next couple of weeks, because this is a 6 months, emergency intervention. We are hopeful that we would also be able to reflect collectively on how to measure progress, and also be able to see how, states and private sector, state government, private sector, and the federal government can work together through the the Economic Coordination Council to see how we can see some indices improve on the short term. Because we have an acute hunger crisis, we have a food insecurity crisis, we have rising inflation, cost of living, and these are all issues that can be tackled if we have the right investments for boosting productivity on the short term, and also ensuring that the most vulnerable population is protected.
Yeah, it certainly sounds extremely promising. But just to establish and get a clearer sense of your operations, could you please share some more insight into how the Policy Innovation Center supports Nigeria's business and economic ecosystem in a nutshell?
Thank you. So the Policy Innovation Center, our vision is to deliver better policies and innovative solutions for social impact across a wide range of sectors. And although our focus is really on social impact, we're very big on inclusion, we're very big on reflecting on what sort of gender transformative approaches are important for ensuring that we're not leaving any segment of the population behind. But one important thing that we do through our work is by supporting a policy enabling environment, we're also able to support the Nigerian business ecosystem. I'll give you an example. Since 2022, for example, the Policy Innovation Center has been at the forefront of conversations around digital inclusion, digital transformation, supporting some subnational digital policy development, funded by a wide range of donors. And some of these conversations that we've had in the last couple of years, we have to bring the private sector into the room. So we have government, we have private sector looking at what sort of policies are needed to ensure that we can, do something about the ease of doing business. How do we increase productivity? How do we increase investments? How do we ensure that our large youth population, for example, are represented at the table where policy conversations are had? And how do we ensure that these policies also can impact on their lives and livelihoods and well-being on the long term? So we have also been able to, through our work, walk through 7 sectors, including, agriculture, poverty, education, health. Through these sectors and through the wide range of projects we've implemented, although with a focus on development and on inclusion, because we also support policy development. On the long term, we're supporting the business ecosystem to rethink what inclusive business development means and what that means for sustainable growth that carries everyone along on the long term.
All right, very important work there, and should definitely have a multiplier effect. But what are your assessments and reflections on the current issues around food inflation and economic upheavals in Nigeria?
So, this was long in coming, when we have, long-term underinvestments in critical sectors. So, for example, in the agricultural sector, or for example, in education or health, on the long term, we are actually, so the foundation for this has been laid, it has been long in coming. I think where we are now as a country is to reflect not just on what sort of short-term interventions, because yes, we have an acute hunger crisis. Yes, we have an acute food security crisis, but can we begin to have conversations as we are thinking about what a stimulus for the short term will look like? Can we begin to think about 10, 20, 30 years ahead? Can we reflect on what sort of interventions that we're driving on the short term will have longer term impact? Otherwise, in 5, 10, 20 years, we'll come back to this conversation again. So whenever you have long-term underinvestment in critical sectors, or we have policies that don't speak to themselves, then we have situations where we find ourselves in an acute crisis, and then we are all struggling to see how we can get out of it. But this is the time to have more long-term sustainable conversations about really boosting agricultural production, increasing investments, ensuring that some of the issues that have brought us here, conflicts, productive issues relating to labor productivity, unemployment, access to education, access to opportunities, gender equity in conversations around productivity. If we can tackle these issues now and begin to reflect on what sort of long-term plans would ensure that these plans are sustainable, then we are able to reflect on how to make these gains more long-term. Otherwise, we keep coming back, almost like a vicious cycle.
All right, Dr. Osasuyi, you're talking about long-term and sustainable conversations. Very briefly, because we're almost out of time, what policy designs can mitigate Nigeria's economic hardship? And are there any stumbling blocks to their effective implementation? Very briefly, please.
Thank you. So, quickly, one of the biggest challenges with policy implementation, first of all, is ensuring that the policies are designed, with humans in mind. So, human-centered approaches that situate the people who will be beneficiaries of the policies in the design process. But the other challenge that we keep grappling with is how do we measure the impact of these policies? How do we create opportunities, put monitoring frameworks to ensure that as we are implementing policies, we can learn what works, we can learn what doesn't work, adapt as we go along, and ensure that changes are made quickly to ensure that on the long term, we have not been implementing policies that don't align with long-term development priorities.
All right, Dr. Osasuyi, many thanks for joining us on Business Week today, and we hope that we can continue this conversation at another time in the future. Many thanks for joining us.